the moment currently. Hello guys, just waiting for more people to join at the moment currently. Waiting for more people, and hopefully we can get things started.
I'll be on and off a little bit. I really can't speak much today. Got a lot of work to do. Please don't mind.
Different hypothesis, potentially. Just to give you all a brief background into what we're doing today, it's just engagement with the community. Just to discuss some theories, talk about different hypotheses, potentially a jinn hypothesis, aliens. We're going to discuss a lot of different things, what's behind the UFO, behind the phenomena, and hopefully engage with different people. That's a brief background of what today's about. IREP, we're obviously a quite new organisation. Just Islamic research into the phenomena itself. So that's a little brief background. So hopefully more people are going to join in soon, and then we'll do a little brief introduction of everything, and get everything kicked off.
Are we also waiting on hearing people from people and see what opinions they have as well, or is this just?
Yeah, of course we're going to have be inviting people on to speak, give their thoughts, share what they've, share what their either experience or views and things that they've seen or heard. Different theories, people from different backgrounds. Everyone that has different views. Then just have open discussion, dialogue, stuff like that. That's all. I guess we'll start off for now, and then anyone who joins in, then we can just catch up briefly. So, Assalamu alaikum for those that are Muslim, and may the blessings of God be upon us all, and may the blessings be upon His prophets and His noble messengers. That's a little brief introduction of what us as Muslims, what we do every time. We send the blessings and the salutations on the noble companions of the prophets. So brief. I've already discussed IREP. If anyone's unfamiliar, just raise your hand if anyone's unfamiliar with IREP. I guess everybody knows what IREP is here. So my name's Isa. I'm one of the volunteers behind IREP. I manage mostly the Twitter posts. Hello, Red Panda. Nice to see you've joined. I would like to invite you to speak at some point. So,
what up?
Hello, you alright, mate? How are you?
Great. How are you? I can't be here for too long, but I like this.
That's fine, man. I'm all good. I'm Isa. I'm just one of the volunteers, just waiting for Imran and a few other people to join. I think Imran invited you personally, I believe.
Yeah, I think so. And then Hassan, how's it going, bro? See Sam down there.
Hey, Panda, how are you, man?
Look what I'm listening to right now.
but slower than the aircraft heading northwest of Kuwait City.
Your video, yeah. I'm not checking it out. It's
Thank you,
interesting, yeah.
Will. Hope you enjoy it. And I'll be waiting for your feedback as well.
Hussein, what is it
I already
about?
DM'd some, so yeah.
Sorry?
Hussein, what is it about the video that you and Red Fan are talking about?
It's about the top 7 UFO incidents in the Middle East. I just shared it on the WhatsApp group for IREP.
Ooh,
If you're there,
yeah, I'm in there.
It's an episode that in my YouTube channel just released it a few minutes ago.
Okay, got it. I'll definitely take a look because that's something that we
I
discussed.
do recommend adding chapters, Hassan. You had to do
What?
that?
What, Panda? What did you say?
Timestamps?
Timestamps. I think I'm not
So you
sure if some added timestamps or not yet because he just released it, but I think he will add them anyway.
Oh, no, look, he has them here, but he doesn't have the timestamp. So he just has 1 through 7. But I think that helps, like, YouTube things and whatnot, and, like, when people search it. Yeah, no, that's a cool topic. And by the way, I'm kind of out of the loop on this whole thing. Is this a recent group you guys all made?
Yeah.
Very
Yes,
cool.
it is.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
IREP's new basically. We're just discussing really the Islamic perspective on the phenomena, and yeah, we want to engage with different people with different views, get to share, and we personally, I believe that the jinn hypothesis has one of the strongest evidences out there for what's behind the UFO phenomena. But yeah, we'd like to discuss, all different and keep an open mind to all different possibilities.
Very cool.
Yeah. Well, what do you think's behind the phenomena, Red Panda? Give us your insight.
I think there's a bunch of things going on, but a little interdimensional. I do like the jinn hypothesis a lot too. And I was telling Sam, I think the other day that, yeah, I mean, I was hoping that we'd get more of the Islamic perspective on all this stuff because, yeah, they do. The jinn is cool, but I do think the jinn is kind of limited. I think there's more than just the jinn at play. But like a lot of the concepts there and like the possession and like the deceit kind of all lines up, right? I mean, it's like a lot of these different cultures talked about similar things, right? And it's like, I don't know, people weren't just like dumb, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
100%. 100%. I think when you look out throughout history, I think you see that civilizations, they rise, they grow, they have technology, and it gets lost. I think that we do view the world as the previous nations, let's call them, as in the modern era, we view them as somehow
Lesser than.
Yeah, lesser. Yeah,
Mm-hmm. Yes.
that's probably the right word. Yeah. So when you take that into account, when you look at a lot of history and you read biographies of people, you've realised that these people were just like us at the end of the day. They had some of them were geniuses if you really think about it, just in different contexts.
I think it's like 100,000 years you can go back and like take a baby and put it anywhere on the timeline and it's like the same kind of thing. Or it might be 60,000, somewhere around there.
Yeah, I agree. So the Islamic aspect of jinn is I don't know how familiar you are with the Islamic understanding, but I mean, the jinn go back, basically, they predate mankind. So this is one of the main aspects of the jinn. So they were on the earth before us. So they definitely are something that's beyond, humanity in terms of their existence on this planet. So they've definitely been here a lot longer.
Is there also like an element of like, not consent, but like, you know how like with 65, like you have to invite them in?
Yes.
It's like they can do better things than humans at this, but like humans for whatever reason are better at this, and they have to like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I guess so. I'll say that there's different. I guess if you look at like every creation, like because obviously we believe in a creator, so every creation has its purpose. So the jinn obviously serve a purpose on this world, just like mankind have a purpose on this world, like the ants and the bees and so on and so forth. The jinn they're very unique. They're actually a very unique creation because they're very similar to us in the fact that they have free will. but they are like almost, you could say, like an in between of like they have like the intelligence of a human, but they're more like they're in a different dimension. That's probably the best way I can describe the jinn. And they can influence mankind. They have like a degree of like not superiority, but they have a degree of influence in certain aspects. They can influence us to do things. They can like possess. Like you, I don't know if you know, like the Bob Lazar. You know, when he talks about, there's a whole classified section on religion, and they're able to like they view our bodies as like containers. And it's very interesting when you read the story in the Quran regarding Adam when he was created. God, or Allah that we refer to him, when Allah created Adam, he made him, he created him as like out of clay. And in Iblis, which is Shaitan, which is one of the jinn, he entered his body and he saw him as, he felt that he was superior to Adam. He was like in a way greater than him because he was made from fire, which, that's what Allah says, is that they're created but with fire, and that Adam was created via clay. So he saw us as a weak creation, and he had hatred towards us because we were given Khalifaship on this earth, which is like in the Bible like vice regency on the earth. So that's just a brief like intro into like the foundations of the story of the jinn and Adam and mankind and jinnkind. That's our first interaction.
Yeah, and can I add something really quick up here? One of the reasons that we make the connection of jinns, being these extraterrestrial beings that, Jake Barber or Bob Lazar and many of these experts talk about. For example, if you look at Bob Lazar, Jake Barber's story, when he talks about, he felt as if a feminine spirit influenced his decision, right? Or is trying to influence him. And it's very similar to how we talk about jinns affect people or try to influence people with their thoughts, and their actions, basically. So yeah, that's just one thing I wanted to add in there. And I don't know if you guys know me, but I'm one of the volunteers beside Isa who work with IREP right now.
Very cool. Cool that you guys are all like kind of organizing and whatnot.
Yeah, it's good that I've seen you. We got Hassan up here. We're constantly, posting about these things, making people aware, because I feel like a lot of times there's a push of this narrative that, okay, these are still like conspiracies, that are happening, or there's just a lot of misinformation, especially with AI nowadays. I've seen so many videos where it's just fake, like when you look at them. So it's good that we're trying to push the authentic narrative of these things.
Oh yeah, and I'm actually going to go to listener for a bit, but I do have a question for you guys. What do you think of the Collins elite? Y'all familiar with that term at all?
I'm familiar with them a little bit. I'm not. I think Imran would be a lot more familiar with to speak about it from an Islamic perspective. But I've heard of them. They're basically, they say that they're a fanatic Christian group, I believe, behind the government.
Well, are they fanatic though, or do certain people tell us they're fanatic? Right? Because
exactly, yes. So that's the other element.
It's like there's already this implied demonization of them, but when you actually go look at what they think and what they believe, it's basically like Skywatcher, that they're afraid that everyone's going to be doing CE5 and inviting all these, you know what I mean? But it's interesting who goes on TV and demonizes them, right? Like, I'm not trying to make this an anti-Lou space or anything, but like Lou and Diana Pasulka, and you look at kind of their histories and it's like, oh, they're kind of low-key occultists, aren't they? You know what I mean? Yeah, it's, it is.
Yeah. I find it interesting from the perspective that suddenly everyone is coming out to talk about these things, and they've all worked behind the government, and now they want to be transparent. I don't think there's ever been a time in history when the government have been, let's say, truly transparent. So it is exactly when they try to demonize certain groups. Mm-hmm. They could be double agents, spies, or they're setting up a psyop, if you want to call it that. Some like they tell you the truth in one hand, but they're deceiving you with the other hand. And that's the reality in Islam. You could argue, because we have belief and disbelief. And in Islam, reality disbelief is to cover. It's like a cover, and it means like you can mixing truth and falsehood can be conceived in that. So that's one of the elements that we say, like in disbelief, is like there's like some people, they like a, what do you call it? I don't know how to use the right word, but you know, they have
Deception or something. I don't know.
Yeah, it's hard to explain because I don't want to say the wrong thing. I think Imran would be more qualified here to discuss that sort of in-depth topic. But yeah, essentially that's my perspective anyway of things, is that these people that have an agenda, certain people that may be mainstream people, not going to mention any names, but you know, like you've yourself mentioned, they probably are trying to spread. There's an agenda behind this. Basically, there's a push for some reason. Let's say.
for sure. But yeah, okay, I'll be back up probably, hopefully, in not too long.
For sure.
No problem.
Yeah. I had a quick question. So maybe Hussam and who else are here? Whoever wanted to join in. But I do want to talk about, you know, this new narrative that's been pushed. We're noticing that a lot of officials from the government, especially in the U.S. here, we're seeing a lot of them coming out and speaking about it or asking to declassify documents. Do you guys think this is like, is there a narrative behind this? Like, is this a push? What do you think, Isa? I do want to, you know, hear some thoughts.
Oh, sorry. Could you just repeat that last bit?
I was just saying, like, I just want to hear your thoughts on, like, you know, do you guys think this is this narrative of, you know, U.S. government officials talking about UFOs, asking to declassify documents? Do you guys think this is there an agenda behind this? What's going on? Because I feel like, you know, I've never seen this push before, or, you know, officials from the government talking about these things.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead, Sam, talk about it.
Okay, well, this is something I have already documented even in my last YouTube episode. It's still in Arabic. I didn't make the English one yet.
Mhm.
But what was noticed starting from the Congress, the Congress hearing, let me just open my file. Well, I have the report information. Okay, we just this second. Yep, here it is. Okay, so what happened that everything started to change after the year 2020. What happened is that exactly in the date June 25, 2021, that was the date where they have released the first Department of Defense report about UAPs, where they had 144 incidents, and they have explained only one, but the remaining 143 still unknown. So that happened at the 25th of June. However, 19 days before the release of the report, which was at 6th of June, the same year, 2021, Fortnite game, which was widespread by that time during COVID times and everyone sitting at home, they made a new event season called Invasion. And it have like an invasion, spaceships and flying saucer shit and aliens. You need to kill them in Fortnite. I believe most of you guys are aware of Fortnite. But it was only 19 days before the report. But that's not it. Also, 1 week after the report, the Department of Defense report, 1 week, which is the 3rd of July, Netflix has released a documentary about UFOs, which called UFO Secret Disclosure Project or something like that. And the Netflix documentary series had some CGI of Lou Elizondo himself and a footage of what's written in the report, and like it was all connected at the same time. So come on, like the report was released 1 week ago, and you already made a CGI of Lou Elizondo and showing the report and talking about the report 1 week after in Netflix. Is this a fucking coincidence? There's nothing is coincidence in this shit. They want to make everyone to trying their best to make everyone look or talk or hear about this topic. starting from people who is following politics and the Congress and all of this shit, and gamers, kids and young people, as well as like you working person who's going to his duty from 9 to 6 job. After he goes home, he just wants to relax and watch anything on his TV. He opens Netflix and find the big documentary release during the same period. So if there is something behind it, definitely yes. All of these groups working together, from game developers to all the studios of Netflix and the Department of Defense and the Congress, all doing all of this work at the same time, definitely they have something.
Yeah, definitely it makes sense, especially nowadays because look, I grew up in a society where, talking about UFOs or aliens was like taboo. You wouldn't mention that. If you did, you were kind of looked down upon, you were one of those outcasts basically. And all of a sudden, especially talking about the government, they were notorious for, denying these claims until, I would say until probably early last year. And all of a sudden we're seeing this big jump in people pushing this narrative. So yeah, I was just curious. And Isa, I know you wanted to talk about like behind the UFO and stuff. So let's go ahead with that.
Yeah, so there's lots of theories out there currently. I see loads of people, saying it's future humans, saying it's aliens. These are some popular ones. Other people saying interdimensionals. I think that there's been a theory that's been, along for a long time. I mean, the jinn go back, they even predate Islam if you look at history. I mean, even the word genius, it comes from the word jinn, essentially. The Romans used to believe in a jinn, and they believed that every person, they used to carry along a jinn. And that's why the intelligent people, those that used to receive knowledge, they would say he's a genius, because he would receive knowledge from this guardian spirit. Essentially, he would be in touch with his jinn, meaning they would call that person a genius. So that's where the word genius comes from. If you look at the modern day, I mean, somebody who have access to such technology, if they had this technology, let's say, it would open up the doors to magnificent possibilities. I mean, even magical possibilities from what we would consider, especially if you had this knowledge back in, history, or as we know, the phenomena has been, present in history. So somebody who had access to something back then, they would really be almost like a magician, you could argue. And what's hilarious is this is what Islam talks about, is that somebody who does magic is in contact with a jinn. Now, there's two types of magic, just to clarify. There's magic that is an illusion, playing tricks with your hands, ripping up a tissue and, that sort of stuff. And then you've got real magic, somebody who is in work with a spirit, essentially. What we would, in English, we would call a spirit. And that is what we would consider, a contract. They would have a contract between each other, where one does one for, they benefit each other. They have a binding contract with each other. Now, there's many reports we can go into the Islamic literature regarding such contracts or, different possibilities, regarding that and all the different literature. But, that at one side, it's interesting when we look at this thing from an open mind, because Islam is not just limited to the jinn. We can Islam has space for other creations like aliens, and there's even evidence for advanced civilizations before mankind. When you look at the story of,
we go to the valley of Abqar, which used to be known for as a valley where the jinn lives, and that's how they came with the word Abqari, which is genius, from Wadi Abqar, the valley of the jinn.
Yeah.
So same relation in English and Arabic, in the words, it's having the same relation.
Yeah, and I remember I read like quite a few ancient Arabic documents, and a lot of them were speaking about how these poets would go to the Afar, right, the area where they had it was a valley in the Middle East, it was like in the middle of desert and stuff, where poets would go there to seek knowledge, different or extraordinary poetry they used to learn from that area, and would come back. So people would call them Akbarin,
This
if not mistaken.
area still exists till now. We have photos of it. It's known.
Well, yeah, there's a famous story with Ibn Taymiyyah where he mentions about that there were people that they would one of the sheikhs, one of the Sufis, they would have a contract with the jinn, and then one of the jinn allowed him to see in a glass, and this glass, it would show him things what other people were doing in this. So this is documented 1,000 over 1,000 years ago, that a guy would be able to see in a glass like almost like a phone, or some of the scholars said it was like a crystal ball.
Yeah, and I think Hussam, you should definitely take.
You can communicate.
Yeah, sorry about that. Sorry, I was just saying, Hussam, I think you should definitely look at this book. I'll send it to you. It's by Ibn Taymiyyah. This is what Isa was just referring to. I think you should definitely take a look.
Yes, please.
And Isa, quickly, there's I think Tracy, I don't know if that's a guy or girl, but like they wanted to ask some questions. Maybe we can.
Yeah, invite to speak.
And if there's anyone else like who would like to speak or has like an opinion on something, please request to speak so we can give you guys the opportunity. Let's see. All right, Tracy, I've given you the opportunity, the mic to speak, and if you can accept it and let us know your opinion that you had or questions. I'm not sure if they're online right now, but yeah, is there anyone else like who have like any questions or something or anything they want to add to this before we continue with our conversation?
Has anyone else got any different theories behind what they think the phenomena is? Wanting to add into the conversation? Just raise your hand.
Quickly coming back to the topic of Akbarin, Sam, I just wanted to know, do you know where exactly that is? Because I've referring to northern part of closer to Levant and the modern day Saudi Arabia is what I've seen so far, but not really sure. And they said it was not just poets, but a lot of people who would want to be wealthy, they would go to those those valleys to gain knowledge of maybe treasures that were hidden or something. And yeah. But I think it's also good if we can touch on possibilities of who's behind the UFO, because I know we kind of touched on that, but
yeah. So there's lots of different theories out there. The aliens is probably one of the stronger contenders, But when you look at the stories that come out, especially from abduction cases and stuff, people, or even let's say look at the Goodfellas or the fairies from Celtic folklore. If you look at that, you look at the fact that they're able to eat the same food. I mean, if an alien from another planet, if we look at this from that perspective, an alien able to eat the same food, there's no disease or no contamination, one could put that down to technology, or able to even speak the same language. It becomes to a point where you start to think that there seems to be an overarching theme that every culture has a similar interaction. I mean, if it would be aliens, they would come maybe to one point, or we could argue all day long on all these different points. I think aliens is a strong contender. However, personally, I believe, like many other researchers like Jack Volley, that is something else. And I think a lot of these people did have it right, that there was something else out there. Let's say almost they're almost natural to this world. There's a natural element to these creatures, as if they almost belong here, or they've been here longer than we are, and they have a sense of almost superiority in their thinking. Not always, but in most cases. And when you look at, you know, the interactions between man and these creatures, you find that there seems to be commonalities, shared commonalities, whether it be sharing food, sharing gifts, helping or aiding one another in some form of way. I mean, it seems bizarre almost when you talk about these stories, or for people that maybe have experienced them, to think that if they are aliens, they've come all this way to travel from one planet to another planet and to share or to receive help. Seems very bizarre. But when we look at the Islamic literature on this, it is not bizarre. In fact, this is what the jinn do. They, we help and aid each other in transgression, or they help and aid each other in different things. Let's say, magic is one of the scenarios, to appear to be having, receiving knowledge from the unseen realm, to guess things, like stargazing and, these sort of things. People look at prophecies in the star and things like this. Oh, Sam's, nice to see you. Come and speak, inshallah, if you have anything to say or add. So these things are very widespread, and they become widespread, and there's like knowledge and things like that. So I think the jinn phenomena, or the jinn hypothesis, has the strongest element for in the case.
No, the reason I agree with you is that if you look at Jim Simivan and even Jack Valley, they have pointed out to one thing, like if you look at ancient folklore, a lot of them kind of do mention similar encounters, right? They might be in different forms. Like, for example, as you said, like the Irish would always say they would see elves. And then you have the Eastern Europeans, a lot of them would report like witches or something, right? Or women. And then you had, like, for example, if you look at the Native Americans in the US, they reported them as spirits or ancestors, people coming in the form of their ancestors. Then you had Middle East, where people kind of reported the same thing, where they would come in the form of either what's it called, ancestors or human beings. But then when you go to a lot of the Far East Asia, you have like Indonesia and stuff. You have, go ahead.
It reminds me with the devas in India. Same thing.
Exactly. Yeah, and the thing is, actually, Jim Simivan did mention this, and he said they all have one similar thing, one thing in common, that they show up, like in outskirts. They're never like in a public area, right? They're always popping up in like faraway regions, and then they're always, one of the things they try to create is like fear in people's hearts. So they or deceive people. He said that's one common thing that people have reported. And if you look at, if you compare these tactics that they're using to what jinns are, jinns can take forms that we have talked about this. Jinns can appear in like different forms. So yes, it's possible that they could appear in the form of an elf, or in a different country you have certain jinns who are probably coming in the form of like women, right? They're called witches or something in some certain countries. And then you have, like, for example, I didn't get to complete this, but in a lot of the Japanese or Indonesian folklore, you have women who are coming from the water. And there's a common theme of, especially in these regions, that these beings are coming out of the water, right? And we know, like, from the Islamic sources, that a lot of the jinns or the Satans, they live on water. So there's this connection over there as well. So you have so many of these connections to bring it back to what the jinns are. But if you try to apply this to the alien, right, I really can't see that being possible, because you can't say aliens are coming in the form of elves, and then you have aliens who are coming in the form of women or kids, or maybe some have reported as werewolves, right, animal forms. And we know from our history, from the Middle Eastern history, we have the Arabian Nights, which has a huge report of stories from the jinns and stuff, and you have reports of them coming in the form of animals. we have collections of hadith with referred to them seeing it, jinns in the form of animals. So there's a lot of connections to be made. But when you try to push the narrative of aliens being are these beings, it kind of falls apart, according to me. Maybe you guys can discuss more, but to me, it just doesn't fit perfectly in.
Well, I'll say if you look further into the fact that all of these names, fairies, Goodfellas, the Wendigo of like Native America, all of these different aspects of folklore. It's just the different names for the same creature a lot of the time, and it leads to the similarities between cultures. For example, you look at the pyramid building. In like the Native America, they have pyramids. You look at some people are claiming in China they have pyramids. You have people in Egypt that have pyramids, and even in southern Egypt, there's what would you call now like modern day like Sudan and areas, they have pyramids. I know they're linked, but even if you go further afield, like as I said, Native America, even places like China, some people, even other people are saying even in Russia or Antarctica, these things are coming up that people are saying there are pyramids there. There's a shared culture. There's a shared phenomena. People throughout the history of the ages have been experiencing abductions. It's well documented in Islam. These creatures abduct people and they meddle with people. This thing is transgressing against all history. It's transgressing against all of humanity in a way that is manipulating our perception of a lot of things. I would say that this phenomena has been worshipped. Every time a great nation, when you look at them appear, what do? They have secret cults. They have secret knowledge, and that dedicate themselves to a form of worship surrounding these creatures in one form or another. And in return, it seems like that they gain some form of advantage, whether it be militarily, technologically, or something. They have an advantage. I was watching a documentary recently regarding ancient Egypt. One of the mummies, they found a piece of glass. It was a piece of iron, an iron sword in a time where iron shouldn't have been there. Now, modern day scientists, they've come to this conclusion, archaeologists, they say that it was, let's say, they believe it was a meteorite that fell, and they say that they gathered this iron and they, formed it into a sword. And it was basically, for that time, we're talking about the Bronze Age. I don't know if anyone knows much about the Bronze Age, but essentially, if you had an iron sword in the Bronze Age, it's like having like a gun, basically. You can cut through any armor that's made. It's sharper than, and doesn't go blunt like any, material that's in their time would. Like bronze is very brittle, and it's not as sharp, and it wouldn't be able to go through, the armors that they were using at the time. Iron sword is like, decades, or if not hundreds of years more advanced than the current modern day time, or for that time. So when you look at that, and you look at what the ancient Egyptians themselves said, they said gods gave it to them. But modern day archaeology, they have to jump through all of these hoops. How would one know that there's a metal inside this thing that was landed, the meteorite? How would they have known how to extract it? Even when they've done the carbon dating on this material, they said that it was like a high quality, mold. So it was like something like, it was bizarre. They've had the scientists at the time, the scientists and the archaeologists that have discovered this research. You can look it up. They've come to weird conclusions. They've had to jump through to come up with how this would have been able to be made. My opinion, my speculation, just from my own speculation, is something would have had to have told them how to extract this material, what it would have been beneficial for it to be used for. For example, making it into a sword. If you found a metal that you don't really understand, you wouldn't think, I'm going to make it into a sword. You might make it into jewelry, to honor yourself, the fact that they mention it comes from these gods, the fact that we know that these things are all throughout history are being worshipped as gods, and and that's what they want to be viewed as in a lot of times, or somehow superior supernatural beings. This shows you that there's something more behind it, just the fact of the UFO. I mean, who's to even say that even flying the UFO, is it just something to alter our perception? You know, that maybe they, like someone speculated that I've seen, that maybe they're carrying it like a rock. You know, that we know that it could just be to mimic, because these things, when you look at the UFOs, as many people have reported, that they seem unaerodynamic. You know, the shapes that they perform, the shapes that they have, sorry, you know, like weird shapes, like crosses. I mean, that's not aerodynamic. You know, maybe it's a way of them showing themselves as superior to mankind. I think we've got Faruq here, so I'd like to invite Faruq as a co-host. And let's see what... Yep.
Yeah, I agree with you with a lot of these things, especially if you try to push the narrative of aliens maneuvering these crafts, right? If you just think of it, when Bob Lazar did mention, obviously we don't know how they look like from the inside. We're just using information that was given to us by Bob Lazar and others. What I've noticed is it's sadly more difficult for us to just point at the aliens and say, oh, well, they're probably maneuvering this crafts. But how is that possible? Because when Bob Lazar mentions that it's just flat surface, everything is smooth, as he said, smooth metal, right? There's no controls that are visible. So those things, to me, it doesn't add up. But when we use the narrative of jinn, there's multiple possibilities of how they could be maneuvering these crafts.
Agreed. I think the whole aspect of the propulsion system that Bob Lazar was talking about is very interesting. And I think he said that they managed to get him to actually fly. I think that was the sports model, I believe he said. So maybe some of them are able to fly. I'm just saying that some of them are maybe just a perception. You know, like some of these less aerodynamic aspects. You know, like I don't know if anyone's seen like the crosses or I think, and what was the other one? I think I've seen a few weird shapes. I don't even know how to describe them. I think I saw one that somebody said that it was shape shifting. The jellyfish UFO, I think, is one of them. I mean, it's bizarre how something like that could maneuver in such a fashion, and operate like that essentially. But yeah, anyway, going on from the propulsion system and the aerodynamic aspect of the craft. I mean, is anyone else want to speak and come and speak around different aspects of what could be behind the phenomena, future humans, interdimensionals? Anyone want to raise their hand? I can invite you to speak.
I feel like Hussam is patiently waiting for his turn.
Oh, Hussam, yeah?
No, I'm fine. I'm just just wandering around because
someone's requested.
So far, nothing is refuting the jinn theory so far, and it's the most matching one. Nothing can explain it way better, and even nothing can match with the aspects and features of the phenomena as much as the jinn ideas and abilities fits it.
Yeah. I think anyone want to jump in? Somebody had a question?
Hello, everybody. Sorry, I'm running a little bit late. I got stuck at work, man. On a Friday, always on a Friday, people who work Fridays, man. You get that Friday night. There's a few jobs that come up. Nobody wants to do them. and there's always the guy who gets the short straw. Well, you know, today was me. I'm literally just leaving a facility that we pick up medical research stuff from, and and where it is, it's like in the middle of the woods, in a forest.
Oh wow!
So there's literally no signal. So where I was, I had no signal, couldn't jump in, couldn't join in. I did, just thought I'd put a little apology out there to everyone. Nice to see all the people in the room tonight. Excellent. And it's Friday night. Thought we'd have a bit of a wacky discussion, talking about what's behind the UFO. Because the thing is, a lot of discussions on Twitter, on social media, they surround what we know. And no one really wants to ask the questions, who is behind it, rather than what it is. So there's craft, there's some sort of biologics for sure associated with it. It is an intelligence behind it, something, but pinpointing what it is, nobody really wants to do that. There are a few theories that get knocked around, aliens, so on and so forth. So this particular one tonight, I thought we'd just try and hear everybody's view, everybody's ideas, because sometimes we all approach this from different areas, different aspects. We have different knowledge, different data that we've collected, information. Some of us in the room, I'm sure, have had experiences and seen things and come to conclusions based on that. So that's what I wanted to talk about tonight. Some of the bigger accounts out there, they like to leave that obscure. Rather than discussing what it might be and pontificating on that, they'd rather talk about, well, this whistleblower said this thing over here, and let's get Congress, let's get the government involved. But at the end of the day, it's those guys in government, it's those guys in big tech, whether people want to say they're big aerospace companies, that are keeping this thing secret. So to go to them and ask them to they don't want to, otherwise they would have done it 80 odd years ago. That group, those individuals who are hiding this, the thing they're keeping secret isn't really the technology. It's kind of out there now. Everyone knows there's a strange technology flying around. What is being kept from us, what's being hidden from us, is what it is and what its intentions are with us. What these things are doing is flying around. They're appearing in secure locations, areas which we think our aerospace would be safe from, and they're not from these things. So that's what they're keeping from, and that's what they're hiding from. So I thought tonight, let's have a little chat about, what it might be. So, to talk briefly, I don't know how good my connection is because I'm still in the forest, man. It's pitch black where I'm driving. So I'll just carry on nattering on until I get booted off or something. Now, so first main theory that's been purported is aliens. Another life form from a different, or even maybe our own solar system, but from a different planetary system that has travelled here over vast distances, or if they're Martians or if they've got a base on the moon, whatever the theories are that get kicked about, that's one of them, aliens. Another biological life form from within this universe, and it's developed or created a technology, whether that intelligence be an actual biological intelligence. The little green aliens have been spoken to be some sort of synthetic biological technology. Although God knows best, or the people behind it know better than we do, I suppose. So that's one theory. So what do people think about that? I want to hear other people's thoughts. Aliens, rate it out of 10. Are we looking at a 1? Definitely not, or a 10. It absolutely is a biological life form from within this universe. So let's I don't know, can any one of you guys get a little vote going in the comment section? Let's get a little vote going. Let's see what people think. Is it an alien? Yeah, anyone in the group think that it's an alien? If you could jump on, speak your mind, or why you think it isn't an alien. Yeah, who wants to jump in, jump up, go for it. But yeah, I hope everyone's had a good day anyway. Have we got any hands in the group? Because I literally can't see anything. Am I the only one in the group? That's all I can see. One little screen.
I don't know. Oh, we have a few people.
Okay. Oh, okay, cool, yeah. To me, it just looks like me and IREP's in here, so yeah. I don't know, as soon as I started talking, maybe everyone just jumped out, you know what I mean? But yeah, so that's one prevailing theory, an alien. Myself, personally, I don't think so. Do I think that there are other life forms in this universe? More than likely, or even I'd be as confident to say absolutely. But do I think that is what's behind the UFO? I don't think so. So, are we able to get a vote going, brother Faruq?
Done one.
Oh, you've done it. Sweet. So let's get that shared if we can. Let's try and find out let's get the data collection going. Let's find out how many people think it's an alien from another planet visiting our Earth might be for resource purposes, whatever it might be. The second theory, which I find really interesting, is that it's, let's say, an interdimension, a creature from a dimension other than our own. Kind of like we have the microbiotic world that we live next to, that we peer into, that we see into, that we interact with in strange ways. I think some people think that maybe this thing is interdimensional, it's visiting from another dimension next to our own. I think that's a great theory. I think that it seems to be something that can, at will, appear and disappear. This would coincide with being interdimensional. They can phase through solid objects, things like that. Again, you would expect that from something interdimensional, that where the laws of quote-unquote physics, as we know it, right, don't really apply to these things. So an interdimensional, or some have called it ultra-terrestrial as well. Another theory is the crypto-terrestrial. I don't know if you've gone through these guys. I'm just watering on it. But the crypto-terrestrials are something that's from this Earth, that lives inside the Earth, inner Earth beings that exhibit strange and advanced technologies from ancient times and have been hidden inside the Earth for a very long time. That's another theory, and there's some interesting, things to go along with. There's interesting evidences that some people have come up with for that. So yeah, God knows best. So is anyone? Where's brother? Oh, there we got a hand up. I don't know if you want to take over there, Richard. Go for it, bro. Isa, bismillah. You want to invite Sugar on? Sugar, jump on, bro. Or sis, I don't know what you are. Sorry.
I can't see them. Oh, there we go.
Oh.
It looks like they have the option to speak. Yeah, if you can unmute yourself, Sugar.
Yes, hello. I think because of cultural beliefs from my family, I always thought that these entities were either bound to people or bound to this earth. So it wasn't because of, I think I always felt that there were entities that were bound to people or bound to earth. And then perhaps through media, like movies, I started to think that aliens were travelers, whether they be from a planet or some other time frame or something like that. I felt like there was this divide between what we classify now as UFOs as being a completely different entity form than what I grew up understanding, bound to people, bound to earth. So I always felt that UFOs were mostly nuts and bolts and had an actual property of material that were, whether it be an AI manifesting in a material form or something that was actually built by as a craft. So I always have a conflict of not understanding how that fit in. But after being in spaces, I started to feel like a unified theory of them also being bound to a physical being, whether it be a planet or a person. But I'm still conflicted with them being divided in that they have craft. So I'm not sure. Is this? I'm not sure how the craft fits into it. If that's something that is manifested as a means of transportation that we don't understand, or if it is an actual craft.
Yeah, I quite like that thinking. So you're saying that initially you thought that the UFO aspect of it, i.e. the craft flying around, was a different thing to what you culturally grew up with, which you said was that they were bound, or these spirits or they were earthly bound or human bound, maybe by some sort of, like some sort of spirit guide, perhaps. Is that what you mean? I don't know.
Yes,
Have I understood right?
Yes, somewhat.
Okay, but the quandary you've got is that the UFO thing, because you see that now there's a link between that sort of traditional belief that you had and the UFO itself, you've kind of left it with question marks. So hold on a minute, how do these two link together then? Because they're so oddly different. So I kind of see your quandary there. One thing I would suggest, or at least to help understand why they are linked or could be linked, is if you look at how we interfere with the microbiotic world, okay? We, in and of ourselves, we effectively rely completely on the microbial life form in our body. The balance that it provides for us, the life-giving properties that they have, and the dangers we have when we have an imbalance in that microbial life form, the illnesses or sickness, and our reliance on white blood cells and so on and so forth to keep our body clear of diseases and infection and so on. We have, because of our knowledge and the data that we've collected through investigation from the biosciences, we have started to bend that world to our will. We've in fact even created synthetic forms of microbiology using the world that they're in to send these synthetic organisms into our own body to make them do things we want. And one could argue that the way in which these beings seemingly interact with this world, is in a likewise manner. They are using the world around us, i.e. like technology, maybe like craft, or building these things, UFOs, in order to, as some have mentioned, communicate or to display a sort of advancement over us, or as a way to monitor and investigate our world, to bend it, so to speak, to what's most beneficial for their existence. It's just an idea that you could ponder on, and it wouldn't be that far-fetched considering our symbiotic relationship with the microbiotic world. Does that make sense?
Yes, I do understand what you're saying, but I still feel like because in the cultures that I've been raised, we do have room for space entities, but I have a difficult time with the actual craft itself. I feel like it may be a drone or an AI of some sort, but I just the physicality of it is where I'm not able to fit in for some reason. And I do believe in that, but it's a very difficult transition for me to make. So I tried to listen to what people's opinions are in spaces to help me understand why I'm having trouble with that transition.
No, that's a fair point. And, I suppose as more information, the more we learn about it, like mingling in these spaces, listening to what everyone else has to say and hearing the different views and opinions, it's only going to serve to enrich our understanding, that's all. So I appreciate your input. Is there anything else you want to mention? Sorry, you did cut out for a brief moment there. What is your background, if you don't mind me asking? What is your background and what is the cultural belief that you subscribe to, if you don't mind me asking?
Well, I'm mixed. My mother is Caucasian, Pawnee Indian bloodline, and my father is from El Salvador, and my great-great-grandfather was Afro-Latino. So I have a lot of that as my background of understanding like entities and such. I do feel the craft is created in a way that it has been manufactured. I just don't understand. I just have a difficulty understanding what its origin would be, if it's was manifested through some type of thought or will, or if it's something that was engineered through AI. I'm not really sure how it's actually built. And maybe that's one of the blocks that I wasn't really informed of other than through media.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, to be honest, this is one of my weak areas. Is the sort of traditional American, let's say, native. I don't like to use that word because you are technically the true Americans. But yeah, the American belief system with. I get what you meant now when you said that they're attached to a people or to a land, as in the ancestral type of understanding, that the ancestral spirits who serve as guides for the living folk towards what's best for the community and so on and so forth. Is there any evidence from that sort of traditional background whereby the spirits have guided people towards any advancement, maybe whether that be technological or warfare-based or whatever it might be? Is there any sort of evidence for that in the American Indian belief system?
That side of my family, I'm not as deep in lore, but I think that technology could be anything. Even holy books are considered technology.
Oh, fair point, yeah. So that might be something worth looking into, especially for myself. I'm fascinated. I'd love to learn a bit more about the Americas and their traditional belief systems. This is one of my weaknesses. I suppose it's because I'm not exposed to or surrounded by or get to meet anybody from those areas. Being a Brit, living over here, a lot of the stuff we get influenced by is, I suppose, from European, going into the, North Africa and the Middle East, all the way into sort of the Asia and Southeast Asia, those sort of cultures as well. So we kind of get exposed to a lot, but one of the places we don't really is the traditional Americas. So, yeah, it's definitely something worth, for myself at least, to look into, for sure. But I appreciate your input, Sugar. Thanks for jumping on. And if you want to say anything or jump in at any point, go for it. No problem. So, and if I make a mistake here, you can correct me. But just to summarise, Sugar's saying that from her traditional background and understanding from her parents, the sort of Native American / the Southern Americas, original belief system, should we say, kind of doesn't match or fit in with the UFO, so therefore it creates a quandary, and trying to bring both systems together has been a bit difficult. You're exploring that at the moment, so I like that, because that's very truthful of you and honest to say feel about it. So thanks very much, Sugar, and for jumping in and joining in. Anyone else want to jump in? Because I know we've got some people here from maybe Pakistan, Southeast Asia, them sort of areas, and I wanted to ask in particular about some of the beliefs over there, because when I remember many years ago, one of the first sort of supernatural words I learned from the Asian community, as we call it here in the UK. Asian is actually like Pakistan, India, Afghanistan, those sort of areas. We describe it as Asian, but in America, Asian is Chinese, isn't it? We call that Far Eastern. But yeah, that word was Chorel. Does anyone know what that is? Chorel. Have I said it right? Chorel. Jump in, brother.
Yeah, so...
Okay, so go on, tell us a bit about the Chorel and sort of some of the traditional Pakistani / South Asian beliefs.
Yeah, for sure, man. So basically, earlier, before I think maybe even Sugar or Faruq you joined, we kind of I did talk about different cultures around the world having different folklore. And regarding the jinn, right? We are talking about, like, for example, I did mention a lot of the Irish people believed in all sort of fairies that they would see, or you had the Virgin of Fatima, you had in Indonesia, you had women coming out of the water, even Japan, the same thing. Middle East, you have ancestors. But when it comes to like India and Pakistan, a lot of people were reporting the stuff you mentioned, Chorel, that's like a witch, basically. It's a woman, older woman, who has her feet turned. So basically, instead of her feet facing forward, it's facing backward. So that's one of the recognition, and you can see this mentioned quite a lot, not just in the subcontinent, which is India and Pakistan, but also certain parts of South America. I've heard a lot of folklores coming out from Ecuador. You have Chile, similar reporting, similar sightings of these women, all women, usually reported as beautiful looking, but with twisted feet, basically. and they're able to influence people's minds, able to read their minds, able to read their thoughts. So yeah, it is quite intriguing, and we kind of touched on this and how all of these different folklores or different sightings from around the world historically that we have collected, all of them trace back to what we call jinn, right? Similar abilities, similar like the way they're able to disappear in thin air, or because I've heard many stories from people from that part of the region and of the subcontinent of India and Pakistan, giving me stories, and they are all very similar. Like, right before like them mentioning verses from the holy books, these witches are disappearing in thin air, or yeah, something like that. So yeah, said brief introduction on the witches.
In Latin America, it's very popular. We have like women that that are kind of like seductress, and then when they isolate their victim, they shift into like, oh, there's one with a horse face. There are different types of tactics of trying to isolate someone to take them away from their wherever they were heading. The horse, there's a wolf one, and they all have different kinds of feet, mostly hooves though. Though there's two tropes, one being that something happened horrific to the woman, so she's seeking a type of revenge. And the other one is that she's committed a crime of which she's punished. So she's, in essence, taking it out on other people as being, because she's so wretched, then anything she's involved with would bring bad luck. The women have a shape shifting kind of manifestation where they become they're like either helpless or they're seductive, and then they shift into a vile form of representing something that's evil.
I completely.
It reminds me of a movie you just was talking about there. I don't know if anyone saw it yet. It was called La Llorona, I think it was, yeah. Where this basically is that what you were talking about, the La Llorona?
That is one of them. There's different versions of her as well, in relationship to her children, and it's she also is like a haunting. Um, Parents would warn you not to go to the ocean or lake or river because she would be there waiting for any kids that would be there. But that's another one. That's not so much like the women who are more seductress or like a siren, kind of not like that, more like the method was to be used as a warning to children that if you didn't behave or if you were doing something you weren't supposed to do, that she would be there waiting for you. So it was kind of a preventive thing. But yeah, she is also in two different ways. She's looked at it as either she's getting revenge from her husband, or she's already done something wrong and then she's taking it out on people because of her sorrow. So depending on where you are in the country or and the countries, they have their own lore for her as well. But yes.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, because I did leave this part out where, yes, a lot of them are seductive, extremely seductive, and most of their people that, they're trying to approach are men, right? All the stories I've heard from are men, talking about they were in the situation where a beautiful lady appears to them, right? And as they start talking, obviously, they notice that their feet are, twisted backwards, or they will have animal hands of an animal or legs of an animal, like, as you said, hooves. So this is a very common occurrence, and not just in like the subcontinent, India and Pakistan, but also, as you said, the Latin countries, the South America. We see this a lot happening. And recently, I was reading some stories from Arabia, and I've read certain encounters where people have encountered similar things, where they mentioned these were, they were calling them witches. Actually, that's the literal translation from Churel, that means witch. But witch in the US, it's like obviously a woman who performs magic and stuff, so it's slightly different. But you get the gist of it.
Do you know what I find interesting is the aspect of how these phenomena interact with dreams? You know, I find that quite interesting. If it is aliens, let's say, how would they interact with our dreams? Just a question out there. But carry on, Sugar. Sorry, I just wanted to put that out there. I thought that would be quite interesting to mention.
That would be another. The succubus is also the Medusa, sirens, banshees. They all seem to have the same kind of pull on an individual to take advantage of them or to harm them, to wreak their own whatever they are suffering from, to direct that towards their victim.
I do want to say, Faruq, if you have time, or even Isa, whoever wants to do this, maybe we can try to relate this back to the jinn and how to prove basically how these are not some sort of aliens coming in, but mainly these are jinns. I think that's helpful.
You say that hearing the different cultural, because why this is the topic behind the UFO. It's my view that the UFO is just a modern apparition, if you like, of old. As every culture around the world has their version of these stories, they have their version of these type of entities or events that occur. Like you mentioned, Scotland, the Celtic people have it, the English people have it, the Euro people have it, the Normans, Saxons, the German folk have it. Poltergeist, one of the most famous words, I suppose, associated with paranormal, is a German word. It's associated with their troubles, a noisy ghost that causes issues in the home. And you go to anywhere in the world, there's going to be some sort of folklore, some sort of mythology associated with an entity. And it seems that the modern version of it, the 2021, circa 21st century, right? The modern techno version is the UFO. Essentially what we're seeing, this is my view, this is why I think they're just having, and the people that they've chosen at this particular time are the Americans, or at least let's say the Western front. Now that's not to say that these things only appear over the West. That's not the case. The data does seem to indicate that, but that's because most of the reports are based culturally. So when you say, have you seen a UFO, the Western folk are going to understand that and they're going to report it. If you go to, say, the Middle East or Southeast Asia, they're going to associate that phenomena with their cultural belief, which is, they would call it a jinn phenomena. So they wouldn't call it a UFO necessarily. They'd say, oh, that was just a jinn. So point being is that the modern version that we're having, and it seems that the culture of choice, or the people of choice, because what I find from the research that we've done over the years is that they tend to choose a people at a particular time, and they tend to go for the superpower in that area. So they'll pick a group, like you could say, for argument's sake, when the Arabs were the superpower of the world, when they took control of vast areas of Europe, all of North Africa, all through the Middle East during the Muslim Empire, they were affected by these creatures, these entities, and they were talking to them, they were advising them, and they were telling them information about, there's reports of plants or animals talking, and they understood that these were those entities talking through them, advising them of how to get beneficial properties out of the plants. So, if you process me like this way, I'll give you this type of medicine, so on and so forth. So if we just scale that up to modern times, and you've got these laboratories hidden in deep, dark programs where there's no limit. Like, you can do whatever you want in these programs. The idea is to invent something or find something that's going to change the world to keep America or the West in power. you may hear of strange stories like a living craft or a craft that talked to people, something that seems extraordinary that, you know, most people wouldn't be able to understand or believe. But in the context of the Arabs at that time, they understood it to be a jinn. And in the modern day, people would say alien, UFO, you know, they're ultra-terrestrial. So that's what I think we're experiencing now. The reason why, from our perspective, at least from the research we've done, because there's always more data to come, right? So, you know, that's why, and I don't trust, by the way, I don't trust any government with this. You know, first and foremost, the government aspect, i.e. the people that we allegedly vote for and who represent us, they represent themselves and they don't have the access. It's the people in the deep dark programs, it's the people who have access to the data right there at the front. It's those guys, the Parsons of the world, who are willing to do whatever it takes to get the edge. And they're willing to do something disgusting or evil in order to gain an edge over their competitor or their enemy, if you want to call it that. These are the people who are most vulnerable to these entities, the ones who are willing to do the most, you know, to have the edge. That's what I think. And I think that's what America's fallen into. There's a dark, disturbing aspect to the phenomenon, particularly in America and Britain, I'd say as well, whereby people have gone as far as they can, you know, to try and, let's say, interact with and get close to these entities. And I think the more disturbing, more disgusting things are kind of related to the Epstein type level, where there's hundreds of thousands of children go missing in America. And I think that this possibly, I'm not saying for sure, I don't want to come across too tinfoily, yeah, but I will say this, that there is a history of this particular phenomena requesting children and wanting children to be harmed. It goes, you know, back to the idol worships of the Dark Ages and, you know, ancient Egypt and other places in the Middle East, where the world was the Middle East back in those days, right? That was the center of the world was back then. And there's often you see sacrificing of virgins, killing of children, torturing of children. You go to the churches in the UK, there's paintings of priests and rabbis torturing babies and children and taking the blood out. And this thing has long wanted the blood of the most innocent. And it's not, I wouldn't say that I think that there's any benefit in doing it, except to show the dedication that these evil human beings have towards wanting this power and this a relationship with the entity. That's what I think, personally. And I think there's cults that exist in Hollywood, there's cults that exist in British media, and there's cults that exist in the rich and famous that are involved in these type of things in order to get close to it. And that's why they've kept it secret for so long, because it's so disturbing, so disgusting. And we're literally at the tip of the iceberg with the UFO thing. I think it goes way deeper than that. But that's why I say it links back to the jinn. The jinn, you could also describe them as, you know, the evil ones as devils, as we describe them. But it's not devils in the Hollywood painted version. You know, something red with horns that hangs around in, you know, cemeteries or whatever. I see your hands up, Sugar. Go for it.
Then do you think that perhaps in America, because of media being such a big influence, where before people would rely on oral history and telling stories through families, family lore and such, that now we recognize media, movies and such, to be the great storyteller, which unites people's cognitive memories. And you could share this with other people. You could discuss, oh, remember when you saw this movie? And everyone, no matter where you come from in your background, in America, we would say, yeah, we saw that movie. So that unites us. So we think of a lot of the movies that we see as help formating our cultural understanding. Do you think and then in America, what we're doing then is trying to piece something that seems like a foreign concept of UFOs and entities that are bound here or bound to people, that we're looking through the prism of media and trying to make a logical explanation of what we're experiencing. And the only way we could use building blocks is through technology. Therefore, we assume what we're seeing is a technological advanced society, as opposed to things that have always been bound to earth and bound to families. Do you think that that's what the problem is, or not the problem? That is the prism of America looking through media and trying to find a technological answer, as opposed to what other cultures have considered organic.
Yeah, I kind of like your thinking here. I'd say something similar to, but slightly different. I tell you what my findings are. In the to stick to what I know best, right? In the Arabian culture, the people who are at the very cutting edge of the society were the alchemists. These are the guys who, wrote the word algorithm, for example, that computers are based on today. It derives from an Arabic word, and it was invented by and first postulated by a Muslim. The modern camera. I mean, a lot of the Renaissance, as they call it, the Enlightenment period of Europe, was essentially Europeans going and studying with the Arabs and coming back and sharing what they found. Right? What that meant was that the people at the forefront of technology, if you want to call it that, in their time, were the alchemists. And it's those people, when you go back to the books that they wrote, it was those people who were affected by these entities. They would hear voices speaking to them through the plant or through an animal that would speak to them, come to them and try to influence them. The second group of people that were affected in those times, when the Arabs were the superpower, were the Sufi masters. These were, if you like, the Hollywood of the day. These were the movers and shapers of society. So you have the two aspects here. You have those who are shaping society through their knowledge, so the scientists, if you like, the alchemists, and then you have the other ones who are shaping society through social engineering. So the people whose behaviours and ideas and thoughts were cherished and loved. Why? Because they were the spiritual men. The men were close to God. These two were the group who were affected mostly by the jinn, mostly by this entity. Yeah. Now, in their time, the alchemy was what everybody was after, to turn lead or stone into gold. Yeah, that's what everyone used to do. It was the idea of enriching oneself through scientific means. As time changed, the society in that time, what they respected was alchemy. So that's what this entity used. It used what society needed and respected, and would tell them things and advance them in a way that nobody else could advance them. Likewise today, society respects scientists, and they love the Hollywood, they love the stars, the megastars, the superstars. So it's my opinion that these two groups are the ones that are most affected by these entities. So on one hand, you've got the desperation to be technologically advanced. So out of nowhere, this thing appears in the sky that isn't just technologically advanced. It's so far ahead that it blows the mind of the men who see it. And they're like, we need that. Whatever this thing's doing, however it's phasing in out of reality, the speed of which it's traveling, it's all domain capability of traveling through space, traveling through the air, diving into the ocean. All of these capabilities is something would put America or Britain or Five Eyes at the top. So these guys would naturally say that this is the most advanced. We want that. Likewise, the alchemists. We want to understand the world around us. We want to know how to separate the compounds. So I want to know how to make the most powerful poison, or I want to know how to make the best medicines. People say I'm a great, medicine man or a pharmacist, or whatever you want to call it, right? Likewise, the masters of, religious, they wanted to be famous. They wanted to be the ones that everybody listened to. They wanted to be the speaker that everyone's ear was attached to. Just like the rich and famous of today, they want to be powerful. They want to be wealthy. They want their music to go all over the place. I'll give you one example. There's a famous musician who had to create in her room. There's a video she put up online of her cleaning it. She's from the South Americas, and she literally had this room where she would sacrifice animals in it, and she had to do that for each time she made a record. And that was through the advice of her witch or whoever it is that she took advice from. Many people have said, Beyonce, people like that who are very high up in the entertainment and music industry, require you to do strange things, sacrifices, in order to become rich and powerful for your records to sell. I think that this isn't by accident. So going off what you said, how you said that people are interpreting these events technologically because that's what we are. I think it's the other way around, kind of. I think that this thing knows that we respect and love technology, and it's showing us such an advancement in technology to kind of be like the Pied Piper, to lead us down a route, to lead us down a way of thinking in a societal direction that is most beneficial for it. And that's my view. And I think that if we were to break down every cultural, mythological story from other cultures around the world, I think we'd see the same thing. We'd see that the chieftain, the guy who was telling you, you got to send your daughter up on the volcano, we got to throw her in, yeah? That guy was the one who was being told to do it. And he was the rich and the powerful at that time. He was the chief who decided in the end, right? And again, we've got the rich and the powerful telling us we don't need to know what this thing is, but society has to behave and act in this way. What are they benefiting from it? How is the relationship between this entity and those in charge? Well, I would say we only have to look at the Epstein and other historical reports of them doing things to children in order to see why they're so devoted, because they've got a lot to lose. And, Anyway, I did waffle on there, Sugar. I can't see if your hand's up, so yeah, I'll just be quiet and let anyone else jump in. Holly Wood, I see, has got a hand up. Go, Holly.
Hi, salam alaikum. What a great space. It's so awesome to hear this side being spoken about. So I'm so grateful that you're holding this. I heard you speak little bit. My pleasure. I heard you touch on some of the Sufi stuff, and I think it's not like it's not something we talk about a lot in the phenomena. Like we talk about jinn, but I think Sufism is something that we certainly need to discuss more. And there's always that famous quote, I think, was it from Al-Badi, that said something to the degree of, God created beings whose knowledge is kind of like veiled. It was a Rabi, that was it. God created, and he was a Sufi master, I believe. God created beings whose knowledge was veiled from you, and there are worlds within worlds, beings beyond beings. That's so UAP, right? And I just think like the Sufi side of things, we should be discussing more. So I just thought I'd add that point in. I'm just really happy that this conversation's happening. Well done.
Oh, thanks, Holly. Yeah, this is that actual side of it, the sort of Sufi side of it. It's a little controversial. You probably understand why, because there are, let's say, the Tariqas, if you want to call them that. There are different views amongst the different Tariqas. Number one, and then there's the traditional Sufi, as in those who are ascetics, who stay away from this world, who aren't looking to gain power or fame and so on and so forth. And then there's the Sufi master side, who particularly in like the sort of 13th century onwards, maybe a bit earlier too, where they were definitely wanting to stay in power and control. So yeah, that's why I don't want to offend anyone. You know what it's like, sis. But you are right. It should be explored.
It should be explored more, because I think certainly in the Western world, we become so consumed in Western ideals and norms and conventions. But this wider conversation of what the phenomena is and how, and not even like the genesis of it, but like what the phenomena is it's a global, multidiscipline, multi-faith, multi-humanistic, it's just not like a Western thing, right? It's embedded in all of the great traditions across this beautiful home of ours. And I often just think that some of the more Eastern, Middle Eastern-y typey and concepts, and I'm probably using the wrong words here, so forgive my ignorance, but I just think Sufism is so magical. And when we're able to like look at some of the themes and the narratives there, that it's so great that we can have the juxtaposition perhaps of another culture and another, teachings from certain faiths, So I'm just a big fan, and it's not something I know a massive amount about. I actually went to mosque about 15 years ago and met with the most beautiful Imran there, and then I spoke to his sister, and I really spoke to them about some big topics, like I have with the Catholic Church, like I have in the Jewish faith. I've asked some of the big questions about what the holy books teach us about the phenomena, and how does the phenomena interact with the holy text. And I was just so surprised that Imam was really showed me some great passages as well from the Islamic faith and culture that really attest and describe what the phenomena could be. So I just love these conversations. Now I'm waffling.
Yeah, join me. I love a good waffle. It's all good. And for our American counterparts who are listening, waffle isn't a sweet treat. It's more pointless discussion, I suppose we could call it that. But yeah, I wouldn't mind a sweet waffle right now, though. So I've had a long day at work. But no, appreciate the words, Holly. It would be good, perhaps in the future, to touch on these topics. It will get controversial. That's the unfortunate thing. But I think you're right. I think these sort of topics need to be discussed. There is certainly some benefit and beauty in some of the old Sufi texts and some of the things that they mention as well. I'd say that perhaps out of all of the groups, they have probably the most writings on the phenomena, whether or not they kind of stuck to, shall we say, the orthodox positions and allowed themselves to sort of fall into some trials, shall we say, because of this, that would have to be discussed as well. But at the same time, it is a treasure trove of information. There's many stories that I've come across. Some of them are really, cool, and then some of them are very sad, unfortunately. Certainly when it comes to getting misled and being, as I was mentioning earlier, being led down a particular social path, it seems like the entity itself, both as individuals, because I know Sugar was mentioning that they're tied to a people. In Islam, the jinn, every human being has a qareen, they call it, the companion jinn that will influence you throughout your life. And that influence isn't just restricted to words in your mind, i.e., thoughts and considerations that you might have, but there's also a wider social engineering that goes on. And that can manifest itself as an actual entity. The thing is, the jinn, they come in human form. And there's a great myth that developed, I think it was around the early 60s or late 50s. And I always forget his name. Thorin, I think they called him. Maybe Red Panda will jump in and correct me there. But he was allegedly he was from Mercury or Venus, a Venusian. They called him a man from Venus, and allegedly he came to planet Earth and he made a pact with the UN at that time, or allegedly the UN developed from this. He went around the world, he met with lots of different people. I can't mind the origin of the story, and there's some questions whether it's true or not, and perhaps I'll share it, because I'm driving at the moment, guys, so I can't really share any of the things, but essentially this guy, he arrives here and he wants human beings to behave in a certain way, to do certain things that he would share with us technology. Allegedly, he brought lasers. Allegedly, he wore a suit that nothing could cut through. None of the technology we had at that time could cut through this particular suit. They tried to burn it. They used, radiation and so on and so forth. And this thing was impenetrable, never heated up, never got hot, never got a hole in it. Apparently, whether that story is true or not, but he was there essentially to engineer mankind. Now, this would fall directly in line with what the jinn do. They not only individually engineer us, but as a group. We have stories from right back early on when the Prophet was still alive, where he was trying to engineer the Quraysh to attack the Muslims at that time. So the earliest group of Muslims were their enemy was encouraged to fight and attack against the Muslims. And we hear from George Bush. George Bush himself said God told him to invade Iraq. I mean, apparently God tells George Bush to invade Iraq because there's deadly weapons there. There was no weapons there, but there was a whole pot of gold, kind of like a leprechaun, right, running after the pot of gold. So, yeah, the entity, and if you, like, looking at the statement of George Bush through the lens of what we know now, through the good work done over at the Black Vault, whereby we have now actual paperwork related to secret programs that the Americans were involved in, whereby they were consulting, if you want to call it soothsayers, the likes of Bledsoe and these sort of people who were telling, you know, predictions about what was going to happen. Imagine the whisper comes into Bush's ear that, you know, you're going to be attacked by Iraq, that, you know, Saddam's going to do this, he's going to take over that, because the entity, the jinn, the spirits, or the, you know, the lady, whoever it might have been, has said that you've got to do this. So he's interpreted it that this is God talking. This is coming from the unseen. This is like the prophets of old. I've received a prophecy and I need to fulfill it. So that's why he would make such a statement that, oh, God has told me to invade Iraq, so that's why I'm doing it. And it turns out to be a load of hocus pocus, just like it was social engineering causing, you know, death and bloodshed against mankind, which has always been the purpose of the jinn or the entity or whatever you want to call the phenomenon. They've always caused war, they've always caused issue between mankind. And whether that be through elitism, where you have chieftains killing children or chucking virgins into volcanoes, or whether that be, you know, sending young men to go fight and die in pointless wars. Interpret that how you will. Sorry, Ollie, I can't see if anyone's got their hand up because I'm driving, so I'm going to shut up again.
No problem, man. I just want to remind all the people who are joining in to follow IREP so we can have more of these discussions. And we're trying to have this weekly every Friday around this time, around 3 in the US, I think around 9 p.m. in the UK. And yes, please do follow us, follow IREP. It's a new organization. We're trying to spread this awareness, to spread knowledge, I would say. So yeah, Holly, I don't know if you have anything else to say. I think there's Daz and Bruce who just joined in. I would love, to hear from you guys as well.
Oh, I could be here all night waffling on. It's that British waffle. I just think this is a great conversation, a great space, and I think it's going to be on a regular basis. So I'm sure we can really debate some great topics. So yeah, I'm happy listening and happy partaking.
So I'm about to get to the location I've got to do this delivery at. I've got like 27 boxes of medical stuff. So I'm literally like 2 minutes away. But I'm going to leave this running so I can hear, but I won't be able to talk for about a good sort of 10, 15 minutes. But what I'll say is I've been speaking a lot and I've talked a lot about the Americans. If there's any Americans in there who want to join in, who disagree with what we have to say, or have got something you want to add, please jump on. Just put your hand up and I'm sure one of the boys will let you on. So yeah, I've had a lot to say about you guys, so I feel a bit bad, man. I'm not saying it's you as a people, but certainly it seems that whatever this thing has got its claws into your, let's say, your intelligence community, or at least definitely into your military intelligence community. And they're the guys who have got the cards close to their chest on this one. So what are your thoughts to some of the ideas we've spoke about tonight? I'd just like to hear, any of the... Because I know we've got some veterans in here, man, some people who know what they're talking about a bit more. So, yeah, jump on.
Exactly, and please raise your hands and we can give you the mic to speak. I know Hussam had his hands first and then Sugar, so go ahead. Hussam first.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Faruq just mentioned about... when they invaded Iraq, he reminded me that with the photos of the American soldiers, when they take photos with the hybrid statues of the ancient Iraq. So it's all goes to the same area of the Middle East. That's either it's the Anunnaki shit. It's another part of deception. So yeah, it wasn't for nothing. There was something behind it, as Farouk just said.
Okay, I think we had Sugar. Anyone else who wants to speak, can you guys raise your hands so we can cue you guys up? Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I have a question about Jen. do they have names? Do you evoke them through names? And if you have any other entities that by using their name causes you to have misfortune, or is that something? I know names is a very sacred thing in some cultures, so I was curious if how that relates to jinn, if it does. Thank you.
Well, yes, it's wide known since I'm from the Middle East that two things can invoke this. Mostly, they say like talking about the jinn too much, and definitely mentioning the names. It's one of the important parts and rituals where people who's doing magic have to invoke them. So the names are very important to be mentioned. That's why if someone found any paper that looks like having some magic shit on it, don't try to read it because it may have some certain names that you wouldn't love to say. And that reminds me as well with the ancient Egyptians, because the names of their gods, but I wouldn't say the gods. It's actually something called Neter, in ancient Egyptian language. But it's like it's not demigods, it's not gods, it's some just like some sort of different beings, like Horus, like what Osiris be considered to be later on. So there, then even the kings, or what they call the pharaohs, the names were very important. That's why they used to keep writing their names in the walls everywhere, because they believe that their names, as long as it's been read or even spoken, still gives them like power or some sort of immortality. But some other kings comes later, and then they start to remove other king in order to make sure that I am the one to be mentioned, so the other one will lose the power. Even they used to do it in the part of worshipping Set, like that was the evil Neter, or evil god in the ancient Egyptian mythology. So they don't like to say his name. So they used to call him, like, if you say he, or the one, that's like some in some way similar to in the Jewish tradition when they say Hashem, because they don't want to say the name of God. It's somehow similar to this way of treating with the names. It's very important. Yeah, sorry for being long, but that was like general idea about the names.
Yeah, just to give a brief overview from the Islamic perspective, invoking names or invoking jinn is something that's actually highly discouraged in Islam. So basically, Islam has come down to take away that element from humanity, basically. Before, people used to be manipulated by jinn, and that's what we're essentially talking about, is the phenomena manipulating or influencing or deceiving mankind. So that's what you see throughout history, is like, from the technological aspect, people using this and taking advantage and creating secret cults, technology, and coming together to use this to take a hold of mankind and beguile mankind with, let's say, technology, and trying to use it to gain advantage over each other, like one tribe having an advantage over another tribe. Essentially, like today, you have one nation state that is far superior to another nation state, whether it's financially, economically, technology, in any aspect. So in Islam, invoking jinn is something that's highly forbidden. In fact, it is disbelief. And in fact, if you want to talk about why it's disbelief, it's because that we believe in the one true creator, the one that holds all power and all knowledge of all things. And we solely dedicate ourselves to worshipping the true creator, to free ourselves from the shackle and the bonds of what these creatures might put upon us. Like, for example, the jinn don't just give us stuff for free, essentially. There is a catch. It is essentially that they believe they are superior to us in some essence or in some form. So that's why we are freeing ourselves from this element. And we believe that not only that the jinn have influenced many aspects of culture, many aspects of other religions over a period of time. So that's one of the key elements. However, your other aspect that you mentioned about names having meanings, there's an aspect of that. The Prophet, peace be upon him, he mentioned that give your children good names, because indeed there's benefit in names. So having good names and giving children and having nice names that have good meanings behind them, there's an element of that shaping one's character, because you want to uphold that title. For example, in Islam, many people are called Muhammad because it means the most praiseworthy. It's a name that people want to live up to, the way of the prophets. Many children Muslims have are named after Moses, Jesus, Muhammad, and Dawood, David, Solomon, and the list goes on. That's another element of naming things. So I don't know if Imran wants to jump in on that, or if you have another question.
Yes, I thought because of, again, from what I heard, like from family and stuff, that you shouldn't evoke certain names because of things like that. But that makes me curious of a lot of military, like CERN and stuff, how they have, and I think that they use a lot of names that are similar to entities or deities and such. Is it like to, would you consider that to be like trying to provoke or imbue an item or object with that entity? Would that be similar?
I guess it could be. Probably it could be to please them. For example, like someone would name a ship HMS or blah, 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 blah. They would do it under their name, like a king has, developed this new ship. So in order, because it's like a direct link to the king, he might name it something like after him or after one of his wives or after one of his children as something like as like a dedication. So it could be a form of a dedication to please such and such entity. Maybe. I mean, it's speculation. There's no solid proof for that, but it's just a hypothesis based upon what we already see in our own history and what some people do in order to please others and so on and so forth, essentially. I hope that is a good enough answer. But I don't know if there's we don't have solid proof, I guess. That's all I can say.
I think Brother Imran had something to share with us.
Hi guys, no, nothing specific. Just wanted to say, obviously I'm late to the party. It's great to see so many people on discussing this topic from various different perspectives. Obviously, we're bringing in the Islamic perspective as well, but I mean, we love to hear your guys' thoughts on this from your different perspectives. And I think, when it comes to this phenomenon, one thing we can all appreciate from the past several years is that it's going to take a multidisciplinary approach. It's going to take various different perspectives and vantage points so that, to get to the truth of what's actually going on. Science alone is not going to solve the problem. One reason may be because, the phenomenon itself is not entirely material. Philosophy alone is not going to solve it. Religion alone possibly won't solve the entirety of it. So I guess it's going to take a multidisciplinary approach and looking at this phenomenon from different perspectives. I guess what we're doing tonight, which is brilliant. And it's, like I said, it's so nice to see so many people on discussing this, from various different perspectives. So I'm just listening in. I mean, if there's any specific questions, I'd be more than happy to, chime in. But, yeah. So back to you, man. Faruq.
Yeah, I just want to say, because Holly did mention, so I do want to ask her some questions about, because she says she had interactions with the Sufis and some imams from the mosques. So I just wanted to know, like, coming back to the topic of behind the UFO, like, what is your opinion, or what's your view on like who's behind this? Because we discussed like alien and the jinn. So yeah, I'd love to hear something from you.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at, so it depends how I'm going to put it. So if we look at it from the Islamic perspective, the answer from an Islamic perspective is quite evident based on the evidence we have at hand. I actually wrote a paper, an essay on it, you can say, or an article discussing the link between the UFO and the jinn phenomenon, or the modern UFO phenomenon and the jinn. That's available on the Sapiens Institute website. It's free to just read and go through if anyone's interested. Maybe we can link it somewhere as well. And why doing that is I take a philosophical or theophilosophical approach to the problem, and I ask the question, well, if we're going to make the claim or try to understand this from a religious or Islamic perspective, well, how do we understand it? Like, we have to find a way of not only just making a claim that, oh, it's jinn. Well, why are we making the claim? Is there some substance and evidence behind that claim? So what I do in that particular article is I go through, at least I think there's 4. And since then, Faruq and me have discussed this, so we have many points of correlation, if you like, or crossover between the modern UFO phenomenon and the jinn. But I highlight 4 main ones in the article, and they include, the deception element. They include the presentation of the phenomenon and the jinn. It includes the hitchhiker effect and a few others. So I draw a parallel between the two. And essentially, what I'm concluding in the article is that when you look at the UFO phenomenon and you study it, and we take a, deep look at what we have as far as evidence, and we look at the jinn, the phenomenon as we refer to as the jinn, these beings, then you see a very clear and distinct parallel between both of these phenomena. They're almost identical as far as their presentation, what they do, how they behave, etc. And that's why my conclusion in that particular article is that what we're most likely dealing with is the jinn. It's just in a different guise. Now, obviously, I'm sure it's been covered this evening. You guys have probably covered it, but just to briefly touch upon it again, when we talk about the jinn, one of the key, conceptually, it's important to understand what the jinn are able or capable of doing. So, for example, we know the jinn are able to take on different forms. They can, if you like, materialize in some sense and take on different forms of human beings, forms of animals, forms of, even one could argue, inanimate objects to some degree. So if they have this capacity and this ability, now conceptually, that's very powerful, because what's to say that they can't take on the form of what we refer to as the Greys, for example, or other cryptids? It's very possible, and we know historically speaking, there's many accounts, account after account of jinn taking on different forms. And one thing we find very interesting, and I think there's a very interesting parallel to the work of Jacques Vallée here as well, is that if you look at the Islamic literature and the Arab histories, you see that the jinn have taken on different forms, and normally the forms they tend to take, depending, at any given time in history, is a form which is relevant to the people of the time. And it's a form that the people of the time would be in awe of, and they'll be inspired by, and they would submit to. This is a very common trait we find amongst the jinn. So, for example, way back in the day, thousands of years ago, we hear of them taking on forms of gods, demigods, etc. The divine feminine, for example, many other forms which people would submit to and obey. And so, if you look at, I'll end on this point. If you now draw the idea to today, modern times, what you find, one question we can ask is, well, why are they taking, if it is indeed the jinn, why are they appearing in the form of aliens or greys, as we call them, or other forms? Well, one potential explanation is that, well, let's look at the age that we live in. What is the current zeitgeist? We live in a techno-secular age. We live in the age of science. People believe in, the science is almost a type of deity in and of itself for some people. So technology is something we pride ourselves on. Now, if the jinn in today's day and age, want us to submit to them or be in awe of them, then I don't see a better way or a better form for them to take than the form of highly advanced beings from another planet that are far more technologically capable than us. And the way they demonstrate that, I mean, if they're running circles around our most prized technology of today, our fighter jets, well, then we're going to be in awe of that, and people are in awe of that. We're going to want to obey or submit to these beings, as some people are. There's many cults and groups that are rising that are almost in a way worshipping these beings. I mean, CE5 is a very good example of this. So I think there's some very interesting parallels, and obviously there's much more to discuss here. Like, why would they want us to submit to them, etc. So there's many other lines of discussion, if you like. But anyway, sorry for taking so much time, guys. I'll go back to you, Faruq.
That was definitely a great discussion, because earlier we were kind of talking about the same thing of how, back in the times, because we had Sugar, who did mention that Southern America, we had a lot of the folklore talking about these women who would show up. And so our brother Faruq kind of pointed out that, look, back in the days, we had a lot of sightings of human sightings of, these entities coming in human forms. And nowadays we're seeing a lot more of what UFOs, which is related to our world, like internal technology. And I think you did a great job of mentioning those, like linking those two things. And yeah, I just wanted to see if anyone else had any questions. Just trying to see if we have any requests to join in. Please raise your hands if you guys have questions, so we can let you guys speak.
I just want to quickly say thank you to, I asked Red Panda to jump on, and it's really nice to see him on as well. So just wanted to give him a shout out.
Should I just quickly jump through just a few things about Jinn, like regarding the fact that the phenomena is also dream-based, let's say. How many people have experienced, dreams where they're basically awake? I forgot what it's called, sleep paralysis, that's it. Sleep paralysis, where you have the hooded figure. I mean, this is very common amongst the literature of Jinn, influencing people's dreams. Like I forgot what it's called. We have it in the West. I forgot in Western tradition. What's that thing called where it sits on your chest? Does anyone remember? Farko, Imran. I forgot what it's called.
I don't remember the names. There's two names to these. These beings.
There's a similar being as well that in Western literature that does the same thing, that mimics and plays with your dreams. I think in Native American folklore they have the very similar, tradition as well. We also have the element that they fly. I mean, that's very clear. I mean, the fact that these creatures can somehow fly, is evident of the UFO. I mean, essentially flying through air. The fact that they live on water, or they're transmedial. I mean, the Jinn come from the water, transmedial craft. Jinn live in the water as well. Jinn are beings that essentially are terrestrial and underwater as well, and they fly. I mean, it mimics all aspects of the UFO phenomena from that aspect. You've got the element of drugs. I mean, Jinn influencing drugs, people having drug entranced, trances, people seeing strange things, strange objects, strange writing, communicating with creatures or higher beings on a plane of existence that they don't normally communicate on, let's say. That's what they claim. So there's so many aspects to this phenomena, such an all-encompassing aspect. I would find it very it needs to come at from, as Imran said, from many different angles. And I believe that the Jinn aspect of it covers so many different forms that it's almost hitting the nail on the head, in my personal opinion. However, it is intriguing to find out what other people believe, and I hope more people can raise their hands, come forward and share that, either if you have experiences, if you just want to share something interesting about aliens, Jinn, future humans, whatever you think that the phenomenon is, come share. Even if you've got cultural traditions, if you're from different parts of the world and you want to share information from wherever you come from, that would be beneficial. So I'm going to pass it over to Sugar, because she's got her hand raised.
Thank you again. I have a question. I'm not really sure. Culturally, do you have room for hybrids? Is it something that is considered, if you do, is it because an entity wants to see what carnal pleasure is, or is it mostly to involve itself with a human soul? What if there is a cultural narration for hybrids? Is what my question is. Thank you.
No problem. That's a very great question. In fact, this is one of my favorite stuff, like all the juicy topics. Yeah. So essentially, there is narrations regarding potentially hybridization, if you want to call it that. There are scholars, there are views, especially from Quranic scholars or Islamic hadith as well, talking about. I forgot Imran. Do you remember the exact name the Prophet gave them?
No, I don't remember the exact name, bro.
Yeah, there is a name in Arabic that I can't remember off the top of my head. There's a specific name, but it mentions the fact that man and jinn can essentially interact in a, let's say, a sexual manner, and there can be produced offspring from that. However, in what aspect? In what degree? I mean, are they like in this realm? Are they in that realm? Or is there like some sort of like plane of existence? They can communicate. In both ways. I don't exactly know. I don't know. I don't believe anyone's. I don't know of anyone or anyone that's stepped forward and claimed to be a hybrid. And it's been proven, let's say. But yeah, there is definitely an aspect of that. Even from we believe the devil, for example, if a man and a woman engage in copulation, let's say, and they don't seek refuge from God, from the shaitan, there can be an element of intermingling from the devil. What does that essence mean? What does that intermingling mean from the devil? What is his input? How does he affect it? That is something from what we would call the unseen, and it's not. It would be speculation or just guesswork, essentially, on what aspect it would interact or how it would affect the offspring. But there is something, and there is narrations and stuff to basically explaining that. How it works, I don't know. I don't have solid information exactly on that. I don't know if Imran wants to elaborate on that one.
No, I think so there is definitely a precedence for that throughout Islamic history. There were times where there were certain rulings that were given in this regard, meaning this was a real known phenomenon at the time. Where human jinn marriages, even abduction, is a known phenomenon within the Islamic tradition. It goes all the way back, to the advent of Islam itself. There were people that were abducted by the jinn, taken away. So abduction, and normally if you look at, again, the UFO world, there is most of the times there seems to be a link between the abduction phenomenon and this sort of, cohabitation between the jinn or these beings and human beings. So again, that's a very similar parallel between both the jinn and the UFO phenomenon.
I think there's a lot of them claim, like pregnant women claim to be abducted and have the child taken away. So there's that aspect of it, which is interesting. I don't know if there isn't. I don't really know like much from like how much proof there was of like the individual that's experienced this, like in terms of how, like if they were like actually pregnant and the baby's been recorded as completely missing. Is it I don't know how in depth it goes, but I know there have been witnesses or abductees that claim that they've had or they were previously pregnant or they've had relationships with one of these creatures or aliens, and after having relationship, essentially they will wake up to find that they're after like experienced like an event that they're no longer pregnant and the baby's gone. So yeah, I would like to just add that. If anyone, please raise your hand so we can invite you on to speak, and please follow IREP for more information up and coming.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't we have this whole thing with Jack Parson and his, I think, wife were trying to create something like that? Correct me if I'm wrong, but
Not familiar personally.
There are some stories about this, but you got. I wouldn't be surprised because Jack Parsons was doing some crazy stuff back in the day. You know, him and under the influence, or if you like, guidance of Aleister Crowley, he was up to a lot of weird and strange stuff back in the day. In particular, I think what's very interesting also is something that's not mentioned much in the UFO circles is the link between Jack Parsons and the early or the first or the original UFO flap of the late 40s and 50s. He was conducting his magical rituals in the deserts in California, the Babylon workings, just prior to the first sighting, UFO sighting, or the famous UFO sighting by Thomas Arnold, and then obviously the flap that followed. And even as far as I'm aware, there's a really interesting book, I will get the name of it, where a particular individual, he's a journalist, and he interviews one of the original members of the Collins Elite, and I'm sure most of you guys are familiar with the Collins Elite. And he tells him the story of Jack Parsons and how it was, they investigated Parsons, and they even asked him or questioned him in regards to the possible or potential links between the original UFO flap, and his rituals that he was conducting, which I thought was very interesting. But yeah, anyway, back to you, man.
yeah, I was just looking at the article, and yes, it was Jack Parsons. It was called the Moonchild. That they were trying to engineer, basically, and conceive a child that was called the baby Satan. So yeah, something I wanted to add there. All right, Jonathan, go ahead. I see your hand raised.
Yeah, hi, thanks. So I know very little about religion in general, all three related religions, but the least I know about is Islam, and as of lately, I'm by far the most sympathetic to Islam right now. But with that, it's a whole other discussion. But with that said, so you guys are speaking of jinn, and I'm listening and curious. And then after this question, I'll have like maybe two other follow-up questions. But all right, curious. Do you guys think that all NHI are jinn, or just maybe partial, like they're in the story of the NHI world and they're just part of that, like that's just one group of entities? Or do you think all entities are that are NHI are jinn?
It's a very good question, man. Thank you for asking. If you look at, again, from an Islamic perspective, we know there's other beings that you would put under the category of NHI, non-human intelligence. So, for example, what we refer to, even in the Christian tradition, as angels. Angels will be considered as non-human intelligence. And also from the Islamic sources, we know that God has created many creatures and things that many of them we're not even aware of. So yeah, there's definitely other creatures which you would put under the category of non-human intelligence, but predominantly I think what we're witnessing in the form of the UFO phenomenon is mostly we're witnessing what we would call the jinn.
So basically, so the majority, or if not all, are jinn. So are jinn considered all bad, or are some jinn considered good? And then I have one final follow-up.
Yes, so it's, again, just to add to the first point as well, when we talk about the jinn, we have to also remember that they probably are much more diverse as far as the species are concerned than us human beings. So they could be and again, based on the sources, I'm just summarizing things for us here. It's most likely that there are various different factions of jinn with various different abilities and potentials and what they can do, etc. So that's something to consider as well. So as far as them being good and bad, yes, very clear in the Islamic sources that when it comes to the jinn, there are good jinn, and there are evil jinn, and there's there's good and bad amongst them. And normally, what we see again from the sources is that good jinn don't seem to interact much with humans. They seem to keep to themselves. Whereas it's normally the evil jinn that seem to engage for whatever reasons that they may have with us.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that discernment because, I mean, it seems that I am most likely in contact with something over the last several months, and I just wanted to mention briefly that there's been a lot of people in the community that say that they're all evil and they're all tricksters, and even the ones that come off as good are tricksters. But until I have any evidence of that, I can't take those people's words for it. And I just want to say, like, these beings have expressed to me things that someone would be like, oh, that's religious stuff, like being better, not doing certain things like cursing or watching porn. It's super weird. And what's been expressed to me is not that, like, there will be fire and brimstone if you do these things. It's more like it keeps you from this, like, higher consciousness thing. And that, I don't know, maybe like good and evil is like a polarity, like magnetism in the universe. Maybe it's like a more scientific thing than a moral thing. I mean, who knows? But, whatever I'm in contact with, it has shown me absolute, utter benevolence, caring, concern, genuinely interested in me personally, and nothing to suggest anything deceptive, negative, or nefarious. So, anyways, just wanted to mention that. Thanks.
I do think there could be an element, though, to the jinn that some of them are probably intrigued by our lives, just like we're intrigued by the microbial realm. So there could be an element of them just, let's say, they want to gather information, data collection for them. They might look at some of humans from a completely different, like, we're on a different realm to them. We function very differently to them, like in a biological sense, let's say. I don't know if Imran would like to expand on that, but...
So the only thing I'd add, that's a very good point, bro. The only thing I'd add, so just conceptually, is, okay, if we know that the jinn, the evil amongst them are tricksters, that they can, again, making reference to a secular source, Valet, he mentions that, they would give you many truths, but they will mix them in with other lies. And we know from Islamic sources, this is how they work. They will give you some truths, but then they'll also mix in with that's what's referring to the sort of trickster element. They will trick you. In many cases, they will give you some truths. And in Islamic sources, we know that they've engaged with people and given them several truths, but then sprinkled in many lies throughout as well. And because it's very hard to discern between what's correct and what's true and what's false in this regard, it confuses the person. So just considering the fact that the evil jinn have this tendency to be tricksters, it should always make one cautious and just be careful, because you never know. They may be aiding you and helping you initially, but then may lead you to something which is bad or take advantage of you in some other way. So it's important to be cautious, just knowing that and I think it's a logical point that if we know the tricksters, then if a jinn engages with you and says he is good and does good things for you and tells you good things, it doesn't now follow that that is a good jinn. It could just very well be the case that this is a part of the trickster element or the ploy. So it's important to keep that in mind as well, just to be cautious.
I just wanted to come in from a different angle. Like, let's say, like a scientist, for example, has got a load of, they've got like a load of rats before they're going to do testing on. I mean, from the rats' perspective, when the scientists are feeding them, they put them in a nice environment, watering them. They don't have a difficult life. Food's easy, water's easy. From the rat's perspective or the mouse perspective, at that point in time, is thinking, wow, these people they're treating me well. They allow me to run, they allow me to keep fit. But until when the actual experiment comes, that's when everything changes. So that could be another element to the jinn.
Yeah, actually, that's pretty good. I didn't think of it. Yeah, good angle. I do see one hand up here. Experience. If Jonathan, if you have more to say, let us know.
I guess lightning fast. I want to say I do agree with you guys about if this jinn thing is legitimate, it does very much seem like the evil jinn are far more are interactive in human society than the good jinn. I mean, that just hits right home in my heart. But I just want to say real quick, I really, really hope you guys are wrong. Okay, I really hope you guys are wrong, because if you're right, that means that we not only have the evil jinn interacting in human society all around the world on a daily basis. We see all these horrors across the world: the genocide in Palestine, the war in Ukraine, the way America is operating. We just arrested judges, but we can't arrest one single person, one pedophile on the Epstein list. Are you kidding me? So now you're saying that we're not only damned on this earth with the evil jinn, pretty much possessing us to perpetuate evil. Now we have evil jinn above us. So it's like we are so screwed. Like, if you guys are right, like, there's no hope for humanity. Like, it's done. And I just hope that's not the case. Anyways, that's it. Thanks.
Yeah, just before we go to experience, I guess that's where the element of God comes in, and then you have his angels. So if you request the aid of God, then he can help you. And if you request him alone, the one that has the ultimate protector, the ultimate guide, the one that has all knowledge and is able and capable to do everything, then we have far more superiority and capability with his aid than the aid of anything else. So just to end with that, hopefully. Experience, you're up. Sorry.
Peace. What's up, everybody? Great discussion. I just wanted to hop up. I look at the history of the world through religious eyes to a certain point. I grew up Catholic and haven't been a practicing Catholic for a very long time, but that's the environment and the religion I grew up in, a very dogmatic religion. And you look at Christianity as a whole, and then just at an early age, I kind of question a lot of my specific religion and open my eyes to what potentially is going on in the world. And I grew up here in Virginia, in Washington D.C., and I have some really good friends that are devout Muslim brothers, and they always, when they can, give me the knowledge from their perspective as well. So this idea of angels and demons and jinn, and I put it all on the table as a possibility that this is what's been interacting with us for a very long time, going back to ancient times. So even if you look at the Sumerian creation myth and what goes on there, and the evolution of how these religions formed, there was always a non-human intelligence presence, and then eventually this kind of like formation of Judaism and Christianity and the Islamic faith, and how everything kind of related to that. I always took into account as potentially what these things are that we're dealing with. I don't subscribe to one religion or another, or one faith or another. I think that the history of the world is really complex and convoluted to where we are at this point. I guess what I want to say is, like, my question to you is, now that we're kind of moving forward and this is kind of brought forth, I see science is taking a hold of this question and kind of researching what potentially these entities could be or are. And you have the potential of this, deceitfulness or trickster element when it comes to studying this. So aside from religion, I'm looking at this through the eyes of science, through the eyes of just, a regular person. How do we discern ourselves from this? Because I'm one of the people that feel like we've already been through it once in humanity, where we worship God's little g. Right? There was multiple gods that the Egyptians worshipped. There's Zoroastrianism, and even through the Hindu religion, there's all these multiple non-human intelligent creators or gods, or whatever you want to call them, that were that permeated through history. But now we're kind of like reset now to certain main religions now, and there's been a kind of like a buck at the Pentagon that says that they don't want to study this this further because they think it's all demonic. Now, I know in the times of Solomon and all these in the ancient times, certain individuals, and even in like Islamic clerics and the people that were disciplined in that study, and they were able to conjure or summon or commune these, these non-human intelligence. And I know that that's considered bad. That's a no-no. So a lot of people that are devout to their religion shut that off, and the idea that is a bad thing. I feel like we're heading back towards that study in a with scientific eyes. But now this opens the door for the possibility of manipulation and deceitfulness if these things are bad, are bad news. So, like, how do you feel like this is going to go forward as we keep studying, like, the non-human question here through the eyes of someone that's in the Islamic faith?
So I think there's a few questions there. So I'm just going to start off with the first bit that I think you started off with. Essentially, is human and the man itself. Essentially, we are forgetful. So the nature of all the holy books, if you read them, they're stories of previous nations, and that's the nature of man. Man forgets all the time, and that's in Islam. In fact, Adam, he was forgetful. The Prophet Adam, he forgot, so we forget, and we are his offspring. So naturally, we're all going to forget. And even the word in Arabic, nas, which refers to the word human, it means forgetful. So the stories in the books, like the Quran and the Bible, and that, even though they refer to previous times and previous nations, it's so we can reflect on them nations and what they fell into and how they fell into it. And our sole guidance in Islam is to solely seek out Allah alone, or God alone, and to only call for him for his help and his aid, because he's the one who's all capable and all worthy of worship. How do I see things going? I see things going back to how history happened. Man falling into the trap again. History repeats itself. It constantly repeats itself. Man hits the stage of technological peak, and somehow they have a type of destruction or a fall. And that's what happens, And I believe that's how humanity continuously repeats itself. I don't know if Imran wants to elaborate a little bit more or answer it in a better way than what I did.
No, bro, it's brilliant, man. Yeah, it's a very deep question, man. There's a lot there to unpack, and there's a lot that can be said. But I do think, ignorance is because we have to remember that we live in a secular age today. Although people are turning back to religion, predominantly the world is very secular. And many people even today don't believe anymore in a higher power or God or these things or they don't have a metaphysic. They don't believe in these things at all. It's all materialism, So with that level of ignorance, it's going to be very easy to manipulate people. Now, why this is happening right now, I don't know. I have my speculations, my thoughts, but I think it's very interesting what we're seeing that's taking place. For one, we know since modernity, people have turned away from the divine and towards the material. And it's all been about materialism and worldly progress and all of this type of stuff. Those are the driving forces of modernity itself. We're seeing a shift now over the past decade or 2 decades where people are once again turning away from that materialism because it's very dry. It doesn't fulfill the soul. It doesn't speak to our inner selves. And people are realizing there has to be more to our existence and our life than just what meets the eye. So we're seeing, and I think that's one of the reasons why there's been such a huge interest in this particular topic, because it tears open that materialism people have been so used to. It brings in that potential or possibility for something more spiritual or higher or something just beyond the material. And the UFO phenomenon does that very well. And I think and hence there's this huge intrigue towards this topic. But at the same time, I think there's a danger as well, because as we're seeing, there's many groups emerging now which are turning towards these beings, wanting to make contact. We know with this whole psionics, and prior to psionics CE5, and a more sort of toned down version of that in Chris Bledsoe. There's this desire to want to connect to these beings because they're seen as something good, wholly good, and I think that's very dangerous. And people need to be very careful. But so there's different elements we're seeing. We're seeing it on a social level. What I've spoken about now is the social level. But then you're seeing it on a governmental level. This phenomenon is engaging with the government, essentially. It's running, like I said, rings around government technology. So why it's doing that, it's very interesting. But again, there's a parallel here because we see the jinn throughout history. They always seem to target, or in many cases seem to target the elite of the time. And that's what seems to be taking place today as well. Again, there's many questions here. I don't claim, and I don't think any of us claim to have all the answers. But I think one thing we can highlight or suggest strongly is that there is definitely a very clear link between what we're seeing today in the UFO phenomenon and what we've seen throughout history in the jinn phenomenon, and that engagement and interaction with human beings throughout history. So yeah, I've probably gone off on a tangent, but yeah.
No, thank you for the perspective. I appreciate that. Just one as a follow up to this. If we go back and look at when angels came down, supposedly, and this is, I think this permeates through multiple religions, that the Watchers came down and made it with human women, and there was offspring, and they taught us a bunch of stuff about the stars and how to make metals and all these things, right? We taught magic and how to use our environment and the forest to do things, right? I always kind of felt and believed that humans were not ready back then. It was very premature, and God, or whoever the source is, was not happy with that. So there was kind of a reset or a do-over eventually with the flood. But humans were not prepared or mentally able to handle that kind of responsibility that we were being taught. Certain ones were kind of secluded off and taught. I look at people that, like, Solomon and all these people, and these people that were heavily into the occult or magic stuff as practitioners of it, and good or bad, that's something that eventually just infected the human population with this. So humans are plagued with this kind of knowledge, and since we're a mixture of divine and animal, it's always a fight to do the right thing or the righteous thing. So I feel like that's kind of like, it's always been a back and forth swing with how humans are and how we treat each other and how we treat the planet and all that. So you incorporate something like a NHI or an potential alien species, and how we would interact or even coexist with something like that. It's a very complex.
Hello?
I feel like it's something that needs to be explored. Sorry, I think I got cut off. But I don't know where I got cut off. But I was just saying that I feel like the history and the evolution of where we are now as to where we were back then, when there was an infiltration of these angels that were teaching us things prematurely, is kind of recycling itself now. We get another chance here to potentially do it right, but I don't know if we're even ready yet now or what. Because we're talking about divinity, and like I said, the mixture of being a divine being mixed with being part animal, and animalistic, and how we treat each other. So that's just something I want to touch on. I'm still very much open to a lot of interpretations of what's going on. I'm soul seeking, truth seeking myself since I was a kid. So I appreciate everybody's perspective on it.
Yeah, I appreciate yours, bro. It's interesting. I mean, it's definitely interesting to hear everyone's views on this topic, because it's such a wide topic to talk about. I mean, it stretches all the way from as what we're literally talking about: angels, demons, dreams, physicality of alien UFO craft, spiritual, philosophical. Everything almost. Government somehow. Everything you can encompass in this topic. So I think we should move on to Sugar, because you've had your hand up I think first, or was it Arcadian?
Arcadian, go ahead.
Yeah, so hello.
Hello, you right?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, mate.
Yeah, so I wanted to make a point that when governments reveal that these aliens have been part of our history for thousands of years, they are real. It's gonna be a big punch to majority of people, punch in the face for majority of people. And when you punch someone in the face, they're gonna be in shock for many seconds. They're gonna be their eyes will be blur for many seconds. So I'm pretty sure when governments reveal that aliens are real, that they have been like part of our history for thousands of years, it's gonna influence the society a lot, and most people will uh, will not be aware, you know, will not be aware what's going around for around months.
Yeah. I like what you're thinking, but I would argue from my perspective, just from what I'm thinking, I believe disclosure has already happened a long time ago.
Yeah, of course.
If you look at all religions or all folklore, that there's been a creature inhabiting all of these folklore in previous times. I think with modern times, I think what it would happen is that people, like you say, they would definitely get a shock. I think it will influence them to now investigate why we're here on this planet. What are we doing? And what does this mean for my future? What does this mean about my hereafter? What does this mean as they will start asking bigger questions. They will start realizing that, you know, whatever they've been told, just like a mini COVID, you know, when COVID first happened, so how many people thought they weren't going to do a lockdown? Everyone was thinking, no, you know, this has happened before. They talk about potential lockdowns and whatever, but nobody thought we were going to go through lockdown. But when it happened, what happened? Everybody realized, and they moved on to a greater thing of thinking, which was self-preservation. Everybody was thinking about self-preservation at that moment, and I think a similar thing might happen if disclosure happens. You know, people will just move on to the bigger questions. What am I doing? Where am I going? How did I get here? That's what I believe. If you want to speak, you can speak now, Arcadian. I just thought I'd mention that.
Yeah, even I believe that. What I'm trying to say is that majority of people will not discuss anything or will not live normally for weeks, you know, because majority of people attention is too focused on something else. They won't care after a week or two because they will be like, we already know this, most people, you know. And I think when this majority of people will get shocked, when they will get punched in the face.
Isa, are you there?
Yeah, I'm there.
Yeah, I'm here. Yeah, right. Sorry, guys. I think what you're saying is true, that majority of people will be in shock after disclosure. I think it will have a big effect on the society afterwards, and it's definitely going to have a big sociological, psychological, emotional response. I think it's. I don't know how it's going to affect government. I don't know what element that's going to have. I think it's going to create distrust, mistrust, but it all depends on how they spin it. I think people are going to feel like they've been lied to for a long time. I feel like people, like you say, they're going to be in shock for a long period. They probably won't. That shock might, you know, it could end up in many different ways. But let's see. That I guess that's only time can tell. Let's say.
Also,
we can move on.
Yeah, just a quick point.
Oh, yeah.
On that point, I think you hit the nail on the head when you said how it's spun. We shouldn't be naive, guys. There's one thing that there's something going on. There is a non-human intelligence, but it's another thing as to what is going to be or how the narrative is going to be spun as to what the people are told. What is this thing? They could play this many different ways. And again, I want to mention Red Panda because one of the things that really sort of I thought, for me, he's doing phenomenal is that he is going against the grain, which is, and he's highlighted this, you speak out against the grain and, you call things out, you're going to be shut down. You're going to be boycotted, you're going to be taken out. And it's unfortunate. There seems to be an inner circle, an inner group of individuals who are leading this disclosure effort. And anyone that goes against their specific narrative or the direction they're going with this is shut down, essentially. So there's definitely going to be a specific narrative that's spun for the people. And that definitely is not going to be, or most likely is not going to be in the favor of the people. It's going to be in the favor of the powers that may be. So that's another thing to keep in mind.
100%, bro. I agree with that. Let's see what they cook up. Sugar. Yeah, I think it's your go now.
Thank you. We talked about this briefly about how there seems to be a connection between interacting with entities when you're sleeping on drugs, but also culturally there's a connection or warning of mirrors and doorways to enter rooms. Usually you perform a little task in your mind. At times there's even lore about the Bloody Mary. If you recite her name in front of a mirror with your friends, what's it called? I can't remember how to pronounce it, when you see something and your mind wants to make it into a face, or you see an entity. I'm curious, culturally, are there any association with jinn in relationship to mirrors and doorways?
I believe so. I think there is a correlation. Maybe not doorways, but I know that I know there's a correlation between they have a realm, for example. Don't know. So like that they can open basically as a portal, I believe. Some jinn or some people say that it can open. That's I guess you could argue the doorway aspect, but I'm not familiar with mirrors as much. I don't know if anyone else would like to jump in on that one that has more information regarding that side of things.
Yeah, I've never heard anything concrete about like mirrors or doorways, but yeah, just folklore. That's about it.
And last question, what about with CERN? Is there any concerns culturally about CERN itself, that it could be opening a portal?
Well, I do live by a hadron collider, so I'm not too sure, but what I know is a lot of those physicists have discussed about, the possibility of there being different beings other than humans on Earth. We do have, I forgot the name of this professor at the CERN, not CERN, my bad. It's called the Fermilab. This was probably around like 30 years ago, where he did mention that there's a possibility of, because he studied nuclear physics and stuff. So, and he said there is definitely, because for a lot of times what I've read is from his articles that they have noticed a lot of activity that happens around these places where it comes to nuclear facilities. We got hadron colliders. So what they're understanding is that basically it could be extraterrestrial, but a lot of them claim that these are definitely not coming out from outer planet. These are from Earth. So I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah.
Thank you.
I guess we're going to go to our last speaker before we wrap up everything, because it's quite late here in the UK. So, yeah, just raise your hand if you want to speak. Yep, go on, take the mic.
Brother Imran, what are your thoughts that majority of people in power have connections to jinns in various ways?
Good question, bro. I wouldn't be surprised if that's the case. So one thing I can tell you from the research I've done on some of the influential figures of, again, modernity and the postmodern age, some of the movers and shakers, the elite, they were heavily involved in alchemy, and they were heavily involved in esoteric practices and the occult. This is a well-known fact. And it's funny because on the surface, they were pushing and promoting materialism and secularism and all of the, modernity and all of this type of stuff. But on the other hand, behind closed doors, they were engaging in and practicing all of these different rituals, trying to make contact with these beings. So I think there's a lot of truth to that particular claim. I'm quite certain that, the certain factions of world governments are trying their very best to make contact with these beings, whether they understand them to be, ultra-terrestrials or extraterrestrials or whatever they think they are, but they're definitely trying to make contact.
Sorry to interrupt, but I personally think with all the evidence that I think that they already know that they are jinns. I don't think they're just...
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, bro. Me and Faruq have spoken about this a lot, and Faruq is definitely of the opinion. I think I'm pretty much there as well, that most of the individuals in the governments that are studying this stuff, they have definitely taken a look at what they've looked at all possibilities, and they've definitely looked at what Islam has to say in regards to, other beings or non-human intelligences, and many of them most likely know that this is at least what they're known as in Islam. The Collins elite definitely recognize them as demons, as they refer to them. Remember, they're looking at it from a Christian perspective. But the point is, they recognize that they are these beings that have been mentioned in scripture for a very long time. So I think many of the people in government are aware that these beings are not extraterrestrial. They are beings, again, that world religions have mentioned, and what we call the jinn. Now, it's interesting because we see, I think, Jacques Vallée, although he hasn't said much about this, if you read his books, you see that in some of his books, he's mentioned the jinn. Dr. Pasulka, even recently, her most recent view seems to be that these are, again, demonic. She was on one of these podcasts where she mentioned this. So even these guys are, the guys that are serious researchers in this topic are starting to acknowledge that these are most likely not extraterrestrial. Jim Sullivan. Yeah, Jim Simivan. He, at least in his original interview with that guy, I don't remember his name, the writer who's had experience, who wrote Communion, the book. I don't remember his name, but he very clearly, and there's a video of him, he clearly and explicitly said that he reckons these are the jinn. And then later on he changed or stopped mentioning the jinn. And there's probably reasons for not mentioning these beings as being jinn. So I think definitely there are people in the know, and they know that these are jinn.
Right, so I guess this is the last part of our space. So thank you everyone for joining. Please, we're going to host this next Friday, so please join in. Keep your eyes peeled, and we'll do another podcast. We'll do another little space, and yeah, follow us on IREP just to keep your minds open to different aspects. We'll do different engagement with everyone from all different communities, and yeah, I hope you have a lovely night, and yeah, stay tuned in for next Friday, and please follow us to keep updated. There'll be more stuff being posted throughout the week. So thank you for everyone. Imran, Afaq, Red Panda, Sugar, Or, Tariq, Nuhaila, Fringe, Tifastic, everyone. I'm not going to go through everyone's name, mentions all out here. But thank you so much, guys. It's really lovely to have you Appreciate all the engagement, all the love. Thank you so much, guys. Hopefully, we'll see you next Friday. So, love to everyone. See you later, guys.